Class, this is Exam 1 review slides, and Exam 1 will cover chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4. Chapter 1 deals with law, ethics, and business. The ruling in Yana versus Biggin is still valid. While there are some exceptions in general in the legal system, we do not have a duty or responsibility to rescue those who are endangered. Requiring that people help one another in emergencies would infringe on their freedom by forcing people to act when they might choose not to. The common law has persistently refused to impose on a stranger the moral obligation of common humanity to go to the aid of another human being who is in danger, even if the other is in danger of losing his life. The underlying rationale for what has come to be known as the innocent bystander rule seems to be that by passive inaction, the defendant has made the injured party's situation no worse and has merely failed to benefit him by interfering in his affairs. If one already has a pre-existing duty to render assistance, then it is that duty which impels him to act, for which omission he may be liable. So too at common law, those under no pre-existing duty may nevertheless be liable if they choose to volunteer emergency assistance for one another, but do so negligently. In Sabo versus Pennsylvania Railroad, for instance, the court held that if the employee, while engaged in the work of his or her employer, sustains an injury rendering him or her helpless to provide for his or her own care, the employer must secure medical care for the employee. What are the different ethical lenses? The free market ethics is one theory, which is also termed the shareholder theory. Milton Friedman is a well-known free market economist and supporter of that view. Under the free market theory, the primary responsibility of a corporation is to improve the value of the investment of shareholders while obeying the law. Utilitarianism. Under this view, the consequences of an act to all those affected by the act is to be considered. A proponent of that theory would try to determine the alternative likely to produce the greatest overall good to all those who would be affected by the decision. Deontologist. A deontological thinker was Immanuel Kant. Deontology is the name given to an entire area of ethical theories based on steadfastness to universal principles. Under this theory of ethics, other people should not be used merely as a means to achieve a purpose with no mutual benefit attached. Virtue ethics focuses on what human beings are capable of being and on how they can cultivate habits of good character that will naturally lead them to their fullest potential. Virtue ethics focuses on moral characteristics ingrained within a community. For businesses, this is often found in the value statements and corporate culture. The ethics of care. The ethics of care is based on caring for others and making decisions with that as the top priority. The difference in assumptions leads the decision maker to consider different perspectives and more heavily rely on relationships than on other aspects of the situation. What are corporate roles, rights, and responsibilities? Shareholders are the owners whose legal responsibility is limited by law to their investment in the company. They have the right to receive accurate financial reports and dividends when declared, attend shareholders' meetings, vote on some issues, and hold managers and directors accountable via shareholder derivative suits. Board of directors are elected by the shareholders and held by law to a duty of loyalty and care towards the corporation. The board sets overall policy, provides financial information to shareholders, hires and fires management, and may file lawsuits on behalf of the corporation. And then there are the officers and management. They're appointed by the board and held to the same duty of loyalty and care. They run the company, implement board decisions, and prepare reports. What is corporate social responsibility and benefit corporations? Corporate social responsibility claims that instead of focusing on shareholders, all shareholder interests are considered. Instead of focusing on serving shareholders' interests, CSR claims to serve wider shareholder interests, including those of employees, customers, local communities, and of the natural environment itself. And benefit corporations, like traditional corporations, are incorporated under state law, and like the rest, their purpose is to be profitable. The difference is that benefit corporations are intended to make a profit through the conduct of business in a socially and environmentally responsible way. Instead of focusing solely on the bottom line, B Corps focus on the triple bottom line: profit, people, and the planet. Chapter 2 deals with the new economy, revisioning work. What is the Fair Labor Standards Act? The Fair Labor Standards Act was first adopted in 1938, and it sets national minimum wages for those covered by the law and requires employers to pay time and a half overtime wages for those who work more than established maximum hours. Currently, it's 40 hours per week. Although the FLSA standards affect some 130 million Americans, not every worker is covered. For example, the law exempts white-collar workers, executive, administrative, professional, computer, and outside salespersons who earn a certain minimum salary from the overtime pay rules. What is the difference between an independent contractor and an employee? A person making FLSA claims must be an employee, not merely an independent contractor. And courts often look to the economic reality of the relationship between the alleged employee and the alleged employer to make this determination. They consider such factors as the degree of control the employer exercises, the claimant's opportunities for profit or loss, investment in equipment or additional personnel required, skills required, the duration, and the extent to which the service is integral to the alleged employer's business. What is gig economy? 1 in 3 Americans is a freelancer. About 1 in 12 U.S. households, more than 10 million people, rely on independent work for more than half of their income. Although gig economy spans all age groups, the millennials make up the largest portion. More than 1/3 of millennials are independent workers. But now the task may be replacing the job. Job implies an employer, often a corporation, and an employee. But platforms like Uber and others offer sharing economy apps, which provide a means to contract for specific tasks rather than hiring for jobs. Thankfully to the cell phones, it is now possible to create markets and therefore discover prices for all kinds of human tasks on all kinds of schedules. The gig economy, or the on-demand economy, is what is recognized. What is the National Labor Relations Standards Act, or the NLRA? In 1935, after decades of labor unrest, strikes, and violence against workers attempting to unionize, the NLRA became law. In it, Congress recognized for the first time the right of employees to organize and bargain collectively was a national interest. And not all workers are protected by the NLRA. Agricultural laborers, domestic service workers, independent contractors, and supervisors are specifically exempted or excluded from this. What is the doctrine of respondent superior? Under the doctrine of respondent superior, an employee may be held liable for the acts of the employee that are committed within the scope of employment. Also, the claims of vicarious liability under respondent superior consist of 2 prongs: an employer-employee relationship and a tortious act committed by the employee within the scope of his employment. Chapter 3 deals with whistleblowing, conflicting loyalties. What is a whistleblower? A whistleblower is a person who decides to report unethical or illegal activities, often activities under the control of his or her employer. What is the doctrine of employment at will, and what are the exceptions to this doctrine? The traditional American common law rule of employment at will is a presumption that employees can generally be fired for any reason or no reason. Exceptions to this rule would include employees cannot be fired as punishment for attempting to organize themselves into unions. Beginning in 1960s, the federal civil rights laws created remedies against employers who fire workers because of their race, national origin, color, religion, sex, age, or disability. These workers or employees are part of a protected class. Whistleblowers would also be exceptions to the at-will employment situation. And in 2002, specifically, Congress passed corporate fraud reform legislation with whistleblower protections, protecting those who report financial misconduct in publicly traded companies. What is ag-gag law? It makes it illegal to record undercover videos showing animal cruelty. And what are the rules of law established for public employees and freedom of speech? People who work for the government or for any of its branches are called public employees. In Pickering versus Board of Education, the United States Supreme Court noted that a public employee could not be punished for speaking out on matters of public concern unless the employer could demonstrate that the employee's statements caused substantial interference with the performance of his or her duties or with the functioning of the workplace. In Garcetti versus Sabanos, the United States Supreme Court held that when public employees make statements pursuant to their official duties, the employees are not speaking as citizens for First Amendment purposes, and the Constitution does not insulate their communications from employer discipline. Chapter 4 deals with privacy, technology, surveillance, and freedom. What is the Federal Stored Communications Act? This act governs access to stored wire and electronic communications such as emails and other online messages held by service providers. The SCA prohibits providers from sharing electronic communications with any person or entity, but also contains exceptions such as when the government compels the information. The statute covers the following: electronic communications that were transmitted via an electronic communication service, that are in electronic storage, and that are not public. What is telematics and how does it invade employees' privacy? Telematics is a word coined from a combination of telecommunications and informatics, and it is technology that transmits data from remote sensors to computers for analysis. Employers are increasingly using telematics to screen everything from emails to cell phone use to internet browsing to the exact physical location of their employees and every move they make, all in the name of improving efficiency. Telematics surveillance can uncover employee disloyalty, which can take the form of stealing tangible items such as products and supplies, or intangibles such as trade secrets. It can flag racially or sexually harassing emails. Arguably even benefiting employees, it allows supervisors to measure performance in exact detail, enhancing the completeness and fairness of personnel evaluations. Employees tend to view telematic surveillance very differently. They feel it puts them under dehumanizing pressure. Employees react negatively, too, against the creepiness of being watched at all times, even when they're off the clock. What are the functions of privacy discussed in Chapter 4 by Alan Weston? The function of privacy performs for individuals in democratic societies can be grouped conveniently under 4 headings: personal autonomy, emotional release, self-evaluation, and limited and protected communication. Personal autonomy in democratic societies, there is this belief, or fundamental belief, in the uniqueness of the individual, his basic dignity and worth as a creature of God and human being, and in the need to maintain social processes that safeguard his sacred individuality. Psychologists and sociologists have linked the development and maintenance of this sense of individuality to the human need for autonomy, desire to avoid being manipulated or dominated wholly by others. Emotional release. Life in society generates such tensions for the individual that both physical and psychological health demand periods of privacy for various types of emotional release. At one level, such relaxation is required from the pressure of playing social roles. Another form of emotional release is provided by the protection privacy gives to minor noncompliance with social norms. Another aspect of release is the safety valve function afforded by privacy. Most persons or people need to vent to give their anger at the system, City Hall, their boss, and various others who exercise authority over them, and to do this in the intimacy of family or friendship circles, or in private papers without fear of being held responsible for such comments. Evaluation. Every individual needs to integrate his experiences into a meaningful pattern and to exert his individuality on events. To carry on such self-evaluation, privacy is essential. Limited and protected communications. The greatest threat to civilized social life will be a situation in which each individual was utterly candid in his communications with others, saying exactly what he felt, what he knew or felt at all times. What protections are provided by the Fourth Amendment? Although the word privacy cannot be found in the Constitution, over the years the Supreme Court has created three types of privacy rights through its interpretation of various constitutional amendments. One stops the government from interfering in the choices you make about your private life and sexual life, to use or not use birth control, to engage in consensual homosexual activity without governmental interference, for example. Another prevents the government from publicizing the kind of information about ourselves that we consider to be most intimate. The Fourth Amendment also protects reasonable expectations of privacy of both individuals and corporations against unwarranted and unreasonable governmental searches or seizures. While the Fourth Amendment does protect citizens from unreasonable searches, it is triggered only when the government is conducting a search. There's no constitutional protection against unwarranted invasion of privacy by private corporations.